Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Vaijanta Anand, Associate Professor in Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work, which is affiliated to University of Mumbai. I'll be talking about skills for program management in community practice, which is part of the course community organization, which is again part of the subject social work education. So let us look at the objectives or the summary which I will be, summary of the things which I will be covering in this module. This module will enable the student to gain an in-depth understanding of program management in the community practice and its various elements. So it will also help us to understand the skills required for program management in community practice. Why do you need program management when you're talking about community practice? Basically because program design, planning and implementation are among the key activities for achievement of a community objectives. Because project management, which includes all these activities, is a crucial skill required in a community practitioner. Okay? So with increasing thrust on community interventions to achieve social justice and equality, there is increasing spending. So when you are spending, naturally there has to be accountability. So basically there is also increased demand by the program funders for justification of these intervention and their effective monitoring. So program management, when you are looking at program management, therefore the role of community practitioner has also evolved into a professional program manager rather than a community practice person who can manage large, in both scope and funding, large level of programs. So it is imperative for the community practitioner to possess project management skills to be able to design, plan and implement programs and monitor and track project components. The term program and project are used interchangeably or synonymously. However, the program management focuses on the coordination of several related projects to deliver outcomes that benefit the organization. Projects are about the effective delivery of the defined output. So, what are the definition of the program management? Project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique project, service or result. Program is a group of related projects managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits and control not available from managing them individually. And program, according to the officer of government, officer of a government organization, program is a portfolio of projects and activities that are managed as a unit such that they achieve outcomes and they are able to realize the benefit. So program management, it shows a difference in program and projects in terms of management approach. So your management area is, if suppose your project is seeking certainty before execution. If your management area is managing uncertainty, so your goal is seeking certainty before execution. So your program is, you have to be ready for uncertainty. If you are looking at managing changes, so you are looking at you are seeking to minimize unnecessary change because you want to achieve managing of the changes. So what you have to do is embrace changes to future works to maximize benefits. So your basic role is to stabilize the current projects. If you are looking at managing risk, then you have to minimize undefined risk which may come up. So that means your program is basically, you are looking into the program expected undefined risk which might occur and to maintain adequate contingencies. So managing stakeholders and communication, if that is the management area, you are seeking to align stakeholders with the project objectives and you are engaging stakeholders into mapping the future possibilities and maximizing long-term values. If you are looking at managing schedule, then you are seeking to achieve work within the schedule. Definitely then schedule will depend basically on various projects which are implemented at various intervals. So generic project life cycle is like this. You develop a project design. So to develop a project design, you do a project planning. Okay, you are basically looking at resource planning and budgeting, because you need to according to the plan develop a kind of a resource plan and look into the budget aspect of it. You have to also probably look at what probable risks will come in and how will you manage those risks. And then you will also develop a sustainable management, so that it becomes sustainable whatever you are implementing. And you are also looking at stakeholder management, and you are implementing the management, and that's the circle which you are looking at when you are looking at a project cycle. The project life cycle, what are you doing is basically you are designing the project, you are planning the project, your resource management, you are doing resource management and budgeting, you are looking at the risk management, stakeholder management and implementation management. However simple as these roles look, each one of these roles is quite complex, because it requires good understanding of various tools for project design, planning, budgeting and resource allocation, risk assessment and risk management, stakeholder management and communication, as well as tracking and monitoring each project component. Several tools and manuals have been developed for managing developmental projects, which have been in use by international organizations. These tools allow managers to design their projects so that all tasks and activities are geared towards the objectives of implementation of the programs. So selection of an appropriate method depends on the type of project, organizational mandate or the project manager's preferences. It may even be combination of many methods. So the 4 most commonly used project management methods are a guide to the project management body of knowledge, which is from PMBOK guide. You are looking at projects in controlled environment. So you are looking at PRINCE2, PRINCE2 model. You are looking at logical framework approach, or log frame, what you call it, and you are looking at agile project management model. What is a log frame, which you have seen earlier also? It's a document that is used within the logical framework approach, and it's a method which was introduced in 1969 for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, to design, monitor and evaluate international development project. Log frame relies on a temporal logical model, which requires the project manager to first identify and then connect project classifications. The classifications include description, objectively verifiable indicators, means of verification based on the objectively verified indicators, positive or negative assumptions according to the project, according to the project outputs and the activities and the purpose of the project. So USAID basically was engaged in implementing HIV/AIDS program into the communities. So when you are looking at this, you are basically saying that your objective is to bring in a reduction in the risk behavior pattern of the population, which probably is at the risk of HIV/AIDS. So what are you saying is, okay, your objective is reduction of the number of people who are vulnerable to HIV/AIDS. So how do you verify? So you will be looking at sexually transmitted infections, and you are looking at reduction of sexually transmitted infections. Number of people infected reduces. You are looking at number of positive HIV/AIDS positive patients reducing in a particular community over a period of time. You are also looking at things like condoms being utilized in number. So you are developing a means of verification in number of people outreached, number of people showing high risk behavior, number of people with sexually transmitted infection, and same number of people over a period of time showing reduction in all these issues, so that you can say that okay, the problem is getting resolved, or we have been able to reach out to the people with a targeted program approach. The log frame evolved as a core technique for managing the complete project cycle from design to implementation, monitoring and evaluation. The log frame becomes a core reference model throughout the entire project cycle. The log frame is the cause and effect model of project intervention to create desired impact for beneficiaries. It engages the views of the stakeholders whose commitment and ownership are of prime importance and beneficiaries in the project. Log frame also provides for conflict resolution model by defining social relationship between providers and users of the result. For example, at one stage when work was being done with migrant youth, okay, the insistence was that you are looking at migrants as people who have migrated within 5 years to a city, or they have migrated from ranging from 1 year to 5 years to the urban city, and the verifiable objective or verifiable kind of evaluative measurable kind of thing was looking at number of STI infections and reduction in the sexually transmitted infection. But there was a conflict which was arising, that the number of people infected with sexually transmitted infections were very less. Even the work or the counseling or various kinds of skills were evolved by the community practitioners. In spite of all that, the program showed that the number of sexually transmitted infection among these migrant youth, the number were very much less, measurably less. So there was a question in terms of where are we failing. So one of the analysis was that since one is looking at migrant youth as people who have migrated to the city within the 5 years, definitely they are a younger age group ranging from 16 years to 20-21 years. So a person who migrates to the city do not engage in high risk to such a level that they are they are getting sexually transmitted infections within 5 years. So naturally, if you are working with the migrant who have migrated within 5 years, your indicator that they are high risk of HIV/AIDS, your indicator that they should have sexually transmitted infection doesn't hold true, because they are still very fresh in the urban areas, they are migrants, so definitely they are not going to show any sexually transmitted infection. For a sexually transmitted infection, you need to have high risk behavior for more than 3 to 4 years. For that to happen, you need to look at migrants who have been in the urban city more than 10 years. If you are not looking at migrants who have been there for more than 10 years, the indicator which you are looking at in terms of reduction in sexually transmitted infection is redundant. You can't use it. But then, are you trying to say that one should not work with the youth? Because if they are showing over a period of time that in spite of working, or because we, organization has been working consistently with the youth migrant, none of them are showing the signs of sexually transmitted infection, itself is an indicator that the preventive program is effective. So your indicator of sexually transmitted infection can be an indicator which says that okay, the number has reduced, means the program is effective. The number has not gone up at all is also an indicator that your program is effective. So this kind of changes can happen with the log frame kind of model, where people are able to give feedback and the organization is able to evolve different ways of evaluating a program. It follows a project design module that includes a logic module and a work breakdown structure, generally referred to as WBS. The project design module is preceded by project planning matrix, which is a 4x4 matrix to give an overview of inputs, outputs, outcomes and project objectives and development objectives. So you are looking at inputs, then you are looking at what was the output, what was the outcome, what was the project objectives and what were the development objectives. The project planning matrix is followed by a logic model that has 5 core components. What are the 5 core components? Impact, you're looking at the impact, you're looking at the outcome, you're looking at the output, you're looking at the activities and inputs. Okay. So further, the logic model is aligned with the work breakdown structure that is then linked to project management. The work breakdown structure is the breakdown of the elements in the hierarchical model. After WBS, each activity should be defined to aid in project planning, which is the next step of the life cycle. So you are looking at basically start to finish, you are looking at each one adding to the next activity. So after activity sequencing, a network diagram is generated which shows project sequencing and interdependence. Program management, if you are looking at program management in terms of functions in managing a project life cycle, the functions are such: resource management and budgeting, risk management, stakeholder management and implementation management. Program management, what are the skills involved in program management? Skills in program planning include skill in developing a program in accordance with the needs of the community, skill in keeping the program in harmony with the cultural needs and traditional practices of the community, skills in achieving self-sustainability with minimum resources. What are the skills involved in program management? They involve skills in developing a blueprint for division of roles, skills in finding the right person for the job, which is the most essential, skills in developing an adequate system of monitoring and supervision. Indicative skills to different stages of a project life cycle. What is the skill? The skill in developing a program in accordance with the needs of the community is the skill. And stage is project design, when you are looking at the overall objective and cause and effect in that particular stage. If your stage is project design and project planning, if you are looking at log frame and you are looking at participatory tool, then your skill is in keeping the program in harmony with the cultural needs. Okay, so you are looking at project design, developing the project design by using the skill of looking at harmony with regard to traditional practices and cultural needs of the people. So if you are looking at resource management and budgeting, then your skill is achieving self-sustainability. So initially you might require funds from outside to have various programs in the community. Slowly you are able to develop funds or get funds from the local resources, or you might have programs without much of spending because community is providing resources for you. Okay. If you are looking at resource management and budgeting, once again you are looking at skills in developing a blueprint for division of roles, and then bringing in volunteerism and people's participation. If you are looking at resource management and budgeting, once again you are again looking at skills in finding right people. Okay. You are looking at skills in developing an adequate system of monitoring and supervision. What are the skills with regard to program designing? You are looking at community participation. You are looking at basically a person's ability to design a program. So what are you looking at? Community participation is imperative to understand the kind of inputs that are required based on the desired outputs and outcomes. So the practitioner is expected to be skilled in problem analysis, use tools such as fishbone diagram and brainstorming tools to take inputs from stakeholders, hence to break down a problem into smaller sections and then develop activities to achieve specific objectives. So what are the core skills? Facilitation, motivation, communication, problem analysis, work breakdown and activity planning. What are the skills in program planning? A network map is made to see how activities and projects are interdependent and arrive at the best possible path to achieve a project's objectives. So project manager should be able to see how different sets of activities and projects depend on each other and which one is critical to the success of the other projects. So here is a need to collaborate and draw upon experiences of the stakeholders of the other projects. So what are the core skills required? Activity detailing, activity mapping, critical analysis, collaboration, mapping, looking at mapping of interdependencies. These are the core skills which are required at this. When you are looking at resource management and budgeting, the third step of project life cycle, it is allocating resources to each of the activities. So what are the skills required? Roping in right resources, organizing and allocating tasks and roles based on their expertise and need of the project activity. Allocation of resources should be to ensure that it ends on time and does not impact the other activities. Budgeting would require estimating the cost, planning the cost and controlling the cost. So this would require knowledge and skills to use tools and techniques of planning and controlling budgets. So what are the core skills? Usage of budgeting technique and tools. You are looking at skills in analyzing external environment. You are looking at resourcing and capacity building or resource building. So those are the skills one has to look at. As we said that you have to look at risk management, because risks are inherent, many times risks do come in. So risk management is the process of identification, assessment and management of risks to avoid, mitigate and control them. So some of the common risks associated with the projects are low capacity of the teams, low motivation or commitment, lack of momentum or failure to scale up the project. So risk management would usually consist of four main steps: risk identification, risk assessment, risk mitigation and risk controlling. Okay. So the project manager must identify, should be able to map, analyze and undertake concurrent monitoring of the risk, and accordingly the risk needs to be documented for feeding into future kind of projects. Okay. Core skills are risk identification skills, risk management skills, assessing of the assessment skills, risk mitigation skills, risk monitoring and controlling and negotiating, and building relationship and documentation skills. The stakeholders are individuals, groups or organizations that will impact or be impacted by the implementation of the project. Therefore, stakeholder management is the approach to identification and handling of all aspects of stakeholder involvement and participation in the project. So the project manager is responsible for identification of all stakeholders for the project, as well as their potential impact on the project and how best they can be utilized for project through engagement. So the core skills are stakeholder identification skills, because you have to identify who the stakeholders are, analysis skills, networking skills, relationship building skills, documentation skill, research skill, and you are talking about communications. During the implementation of the project manager would be responsible for monitoring, tracking, collecting and documentation of the data and its analysis. So collection of data from the field is crucial. So many times what happens is, if there is no documentation skill is not built up among the team, so even if the work is done, there is no documentation, because many times in monitoring you might do tracking, meaning if a project is saying that so many people were reached out, so a monitoring or evaluative team will go into the field and try to track all those people who you are saying that you have covered. So if over there those people are not identifiable by the team, then it becomes like you have not effectively implemented the program. So the program manager would also have to check on the quality of the data. If the in the case which I was talking about, if the sexually transmitted infection among the youth is not showing, but because the evaluative group is all the time asking you about it, you might feel like fudging the report. You might feel like giving more numbers, in the sexually transmitted infection, because you may feel that, okay, probably, we will be held up or we will be made responsible, or a project may come to an end because we are not showing enough numbers. But that would mean your quality of data, you are compromising on the quality of data, because this finding that if it is youth, if they are younger in age, the sexually transmitted infection numbers will have to be less, probably becomes indicator for the further projects which are working with the youth. So your quality of data is very important, and also mandatory training of the field staff, where they are able to collect data against the indicators, are able to understand that whatever data is there, it has its own story, and or it is indicator in itself for the your program implementation process. So the community practitioner should continue to motivate the group and in facing the challenges in the field. Okay, so otherwise what happens is, the core skills which are needed are not built up, so it affects the implementation of the program, and the data will be faulty, which will in a way affect further project expansion, or if this model is implemented somewhere else, probably it won't work, because the basic data which says that this program is implemented in a particular way is faulty. So what are the core skills utilized here? You have to understand MIS software, because you need to be able to record the data which are probably recorded by the grassroots activist, or your grassroots community based organizers who have been storing data on registers or on papers. It is the job of the manager probably to put all that in MIS software. So you need to be able to train your staff, as well as train yourself for data capture, analysis of the data auditing, training skills and communication skills, and evaluation skills. Like in one of the project, it so happened that the migrant youth who were vulnerable to HIV/AIDS, they insisted that they travel to a long distance to go to a red light area, or to go to the sex workers, to have access to sex workers, which involved traveling by train. Okay, and because those sex workers, that particular community is known sex workers community, so it was easier to believe that okay, they probably must be going all the way over there. But deeper analysis brought up these kind of questions, like if this is a youth group which is new to Mumbai, and if they are staying in a slum community where they know only their own native language, it's not possible that on daily wages, which they don't even get in monetarily in their hand, do they spend money by traveling by train to reach to this sex workers community, which is almost 1 or 2 hours away. It looked like they are not telling you the truth. So the data which you have collected, at the activist, the grassroots workers, the data which was collected, you need to look at it and sit with them and train them to identify gaps in the data, because this is not believable. So if they are working from morning 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening, there are possibility of traveling from their community to the nearby station, which is half an hour away, and traveling another hour by train to go to a sex worker seems impossible. So that means their high risk behavior involves engaging in having sexual encounters in and around the communities. Then what is the reason that these youth have not been telling you the truth? It's basically because they are engaging in sexual relationships with their own relatives and in the communities where they wouldn't want to identify the women who may be homemakers, who may be young single women, who may be their own distant relatives. So because of this, they are not able to give out truthful information. But once you know this truth, that means the responsibility of reaching out to these women who are again high risk now because they are engaged in a high risk behavior becomes imperative. So if you did not go in depth into data analysis, you land up not reaching out to an entire group of women who are possibly vulnerable in that community. So in conclusion, what are you saying is that program management is a crucial skill for ensuring that projects are designed, planned and implemented in the most effective and efficient manner. The skills described in these modules are prerequisites for successful project design and implementation. It may also be noted that some of these skills are super skills into which more than one skill is subsumed. An inclination for continuous learning is required. Upgradation of skill and updating of knowledge is required, which helps the community practitioners in furthering the professional goals as well as achieving program objectives. So this module helps us to understand that in today's, when you are talking about CSR model and when you are talking about USAID or larger funding organization who are extracting lot or demanding lot of data which ensures that program is implemented in a proper way, you need to be a good program manager with good program manager skills. So this probably you will have to, coming from a community organization base, or when you are looking at community action model, you probably will have to look at the management aspects, look at the way funding organizations are looking at the community work, and in that way make changes if you are into project implementation, and if you are looking at project implementation as the way of working into the communities. So management books, some of the manuals which have been developed by USAID and various funding organizations will be very helpful for you to understand what kind of skills they are looking for, and this will help you to implement a project in a better way, and in a way reach out to the community which you may not reach out if there are lack of funds. So this is the crux of this particular model. So thank you for being with us.